We have not discussed the Will Levis game against the Steelers on this show because we didn't have a Thursday night recap last week because I was on the road for a funeral, so I appreciate that. And so I wanted to ask you, going back and watching the Will Levis game against the Steelers, what stood out to you about the way that he played in his second game against Pittsburgh?
I would say the first thing, I mean, there's a lot of different. The first thing though was both 2-minute drives, like both 2-minute drives against one of the better defenses that just makes their living on sacks and turnovers. And the 2-minute drive at the end of the half was amazing. Like made this 3rd and 13 throw off his back foot on this little corner and up versus quarters coverage that I was just like, what? Like you watch it, you're like, he doesn't look like a rookie who's in his second start. Just doesn't look like that way. And quite honestly, I don't know if America was ready for him because you look at what Vrabel said about him. He's like, yeah, he's a third quarterback. Like everyone just sort of like wrote him off. Like, yeah, he fell in the draft. And man, he's one of 10 rookie quarterbacks to now start because Tommy DeVito is starting this coming Sunday at 10. It's a record. It's the most ever, which is wild to me. And it just looks like he's ready to play. Like it's a 2-minute drive and then a 2-minute drive with no timeouts. After that, like they had 2-2-minute drives in the second half at the end of the game. His first one didn't end so hot, but then to be able to actually drive down and give yourself and your team a chance to win on the road in Blitzburg, the steel curtain of a defense, and that's how they're winning. They're not winning because of their offensive play. They're winning because of their defense. Like it's a moral victory for the guy because he was, and it really honestly probably showed the team more in his second start than he did his first start when he threw for 4 touchdowns.
I totally agree.
He showed way, because like a lot of times it can be this like, catches lightning in a bottle and it's like, okay, cool. And then the rest of the season just, I was just so impressed with the way he operated just in general, like just able to actually go out there and you see him at the line of scrimmage, calling out Mike IDs, switching protections, signaling. And I'm like, this guy was ready for his opportunity and he proved it to his team. And that's why Mike Vrabel said earlier this week that he's going to be the starter moving forward.
It's funny watching the mix of moments where they really trusted him and moments where they didn't. Remember, they got the ball near midfield late in the game. They ran the ball 3 times, ultimately didn't get a first down.
Yeah.
That was frustrating to me to watch because earlier in the game, I think it was on their second drive, they have 1st and 23 from their 5-yard line. And they line up an empty. They line up an empty on 1st and 23 from their own 5. And I'm like,
hit the hop on the little.
Oh, it's a beautiful throw. Just
amazing.
A beautiful throw.
Yeah.
And them doing that, I'm like, man, that's a lot to put on a guy in his second start on the road in Pittsburgh in the shadow of his own goalpost is giving him that look on 1st and 23, and he fires a bullet. And listen, it's a mixed bag. He threw 3 or 4 balls in this game that
should have been picked. Yeah.
6 inches one way or the other, they're intercepted. And that's before the last drive. I don't care. You're throwing an interception when you're down to touchdown with a minute left. I don't give a shit. Like you got to try to make something happen. But there are plenty of throws he put up for grabs. So it's not all perfect, but some of the in-breaking routes, the throw in under pressure outside the numbers that he hit, that was gorgeous. What is most impressive to me is the physical talent is undeniable. The guy has a hose. The arm angles are very real.
The release.
The release is beautiful. It reminds me, and this is, I hesitate to use this word, but this guy's name, but it's the guy that kept coming up when I was thinking about it. The way he throws the football reminds me of Zach Wilson, but he is bigger than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, he's yoked. So he's been doing too many curls. I'm like, dude, chill out, man.
So I think that stuck out to me multiple times in this game, where the strength he has in the pocket is actually a really important thing because he can get out of pressure. He made throws while getting tackled. And with this offensive line, he's going to have to deal with a lot of muddy pockets. So it was a really fascinating experience watching that second game because I thought we learned a lot more than we did the first game.
Yeah, and that's what I probably stood out the second most was the pockets weren't great, obviously, because
they're not going to be on that team.
You got Highsmith and you got Watt, and you got Watt was lining up over the center, all sorts of games. They were ready for him, but he just sort of stood in there and he didn't look. I hate to use the word frightened, but sometimes rookies are not frightened is not the right word. Maybe just like spooked a little bit of like the type of pass rush. They're bothered a little bit. And honestly, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad. He didn't look bothered at all. Like it was just like step up, guys at my feet. He's getting sawed down, which I don't like that one where he got taken out as he's throwing his I did not know how that was not roughing the passer. But there's a couple of those that were just like that. And he's just able to contort his body in a way that I'm like, whoa, like it just makes you on film like, whoa, like it actually is like, hey, like, hold on, like, let me rewind that. And did you just make this type of throw in a muddy pocket from a different arm angle? And sure enough, he has. I mean, the arm strength looks better than I thought coming out of the draft. Like I'm saying, he's doing some curls, he's doing some bench, he's doing some arms, some shoulder, like everything, because it stood out to me.
He's already the most jacked quarterback in the league, right? Who else would even be in the conversation?
I mean, he reminds me, not yet, and don't ever get like this, Will Levis, but the Brady Quinn. Like Brady Quinn was like so yoked and such a meathead that you just want to be just benching. I'm like, dude, don't do that. But like this dude is Will Levis is definitely doing some arm curls.
Yeah, he might be the most jacked quarterback in the league. There are some secretly jacked quarterbacks. Like Justin Herbert is like way more jacked than I think people understand. Derek Carr is pretty jacked. Dude. So, but I think he already has that. But so the pocket presence, and I think this is a very important distinction. It's why I hesitated to say Zach Wilson's name at any point. The difference, the key difference between those two guys outside of the size, when you watch Will Levis at Kentucky, he's lived this life. That offensive line at Kentucky last year and just the supporting cast, period, he was under duress constantly. So we've already seen him have to navigate those spaces. Decision-making and then a willingness to hang out of the ball too long were some of the things that people were worried about coming into the draft. When you watch Zach Wilson at BYU, the arm strength and the arm talent was undeniable the same way it is now, but he never, ever had to deal with an ounce of pressure that entire year because they were always at a talent advantage. So the fact that all the stuff that we want to see translate in terms of the arm strength and that physical ability is combining with his ability to kind of still deal with those muddy situations, I think that there is a lot to like about what you've seen from him so far. And after that game was over, I said pretty definitively, I was like, there's no reason he shouldn't keep playing. You have run out of reasons why he should be the quarterback for the rest of the season. And clearly Tennessee came to that same conclusion.
Well, and that was my first thought was the first game, it was like, okay, like, yeah, he played really well and he was just dropping bombs. Like I was like, okay, you're not going to be able to bomb it every single game. I want to be able to see you work underneath. I want to see your middle range accuracy. I want to see your deep range accuracy out on the outcuts. And after the game against Pittsburgh, I mean, that's what came to my mind. I'm like, he's going to really have a hard time going back to the bench. Like they're going to be like, we drafted him for a reason. He's got to be able to run with it. They might make a late season push. Who knows? But it's definitely Will Levis time in Tennessee, in my opinion.
People are going to talk a lot about why did we miss, if this keeps going, right? If he hits and he works out, and it's way too early to start having this conversation. But if that happens, people are going to be like, well, why did he fall to the second round? Why did this happen? And I think it's important to recognize that there are elements to his evaluation that make you worried. Like his willingness to stand in there and take sacks. He would just get crushed in the pocket last year at Kentucky, just absolutely crushed. And some of the decision-making stuff is real. Like too often, I think we've talked ourselves into these big armed guys who can throw the ball a mile when they're overall they're lacking in other areas. So I don't think it's as simple as you watch that first couple games and you see how he throws the ball and say, how did that guy fall to the second round? Like there were definitely concerns coming in. It probably fell further than people thought, but I don't want the revisionist history to creep in quite yet. Like there were actual tangible reasons why he wasn't somebody that was drafted as high as those other guys were.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And honestly, I just think it's such a crap. We talk about all that. It's such a crapshoot evaluating quarterbacks in college because it's just you don't really know how good guys are until they're able to run an NFL offense, and that's why like the Brock Purdy thing to me is wild still because he's like Mr. Irrelevant and he's balling, and it's just like you got to give guys like this a chance to develop, and it was almost better for Will to sort of sit back to watch Tannehill, to watch Malik, and just be like, okay, like I tell this all the time, like. And it's the Aaron Rodgers thing. He sat for 3 or 4 years before because he was able to understand the grasp the offense and not just be thrust into action and then make so many mistakes where your confidence is killed. Like I think this was really good timing for Will Levis to make his debut and his second start. And quite honestly, I'm looking forward to watching him moving forward.
But what if Tannehill doesn't get hurt? What if Tannehill plays this entire season and we never get to see him play? He clearly wasn't showing enough in practice for them to be like, oh yeah, he's definitely the backup quarterback. So there would have been a chance that we would have gotten all the way to the end of the year and they wouldn't have known what they have in him. And it's just another example that every once in a while, it's just better to be lucky than it is to be smart.
Yeah, and then honestly, there's this thing called gamers. Like I used to suck in practice at Missouri. Like I just was like I wouldn't suck, but it would just be like, okay. But then sometimes when those lights turn on and between those white lines, especially quarterbacks, like you don't want to be known as a gamer as a quarterback because you want to have good practice habits. But for me, it was just like, man, I just felt it in the game. He looks like a gamer to me. It just like when it comes on, it just hits. It just makes sense for him.